I'm a 5'10" frame, 5'11" frame, depending on how much I'm slouching or not. Mm-hmm. And, I was hovering around 245 pounds. And at that point, you don't even want to step on the scale. Right? You don't really want to know. Mm-hmm. So when you're at your worst, you're not stepping on a scale. Mm-hmm. Like the one time you step on a scale, it's like, hey, maybe I lost 5 pounds. Let me step on a scale. And it was like one of those times that I stepped on, I was like 245 pounds.
So it's like a shocker to you, recognizing how much weight you gain.
Utter shame. Like I spent easily 15 years of my life where I never took my shirt off at a beach.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like body shame.
Oh, total, 100%. And no, completely uncomfortable with myself.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Meta Transitions. Today, my friend Stevan is here. I will allow Stevan to introduce himself. Welcome to our show, Stevan.
Thank you, Tricia. It's nice to be here.
Yes.
It's nice to see you again. It's nice to be recording mid-pandemic.
Definitely.
Tricia and I met a few years ago when I had the opportunity to be her pastor. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's a little bit of who I am. I've been working in churches for a very long time, basically my whole adult life. But I also dabble in all kinds of hobbies.
Yes.
But most importantly, I'm a dad to 3 amazing kids, Logan, Nolan, and Juliana. And I'm married to a wonderful Heather Joy James. And just somebody who's lived a lot of life, it feels like.
Yes, and we're happy you're here to sort of share a part of your journey with us.
Thanks.
So, I'm sure my audience is going to love your story. So that's the first thing we're going to ask
part of my story. I can't share it all.
For sure. You have to leave a little bit of mystery, right?
That's right. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your transition story, or bits of it that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, Tricia, it feels like all of life is a transition.
Yes.
I think if we're really looking and being honest and wondering about the things we're experiencing, if we're really open to the world and open to the people around us, we experience transitions.
Sure.
But I think the one that, often people think about, for me in particular, and those that have known me for a lot of years, anybody that's met me in the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years, I guess, probably wouldn't notice as much. Mm-hmm. But certainly anybody that knew me like in 2015 and earlier would certainly be able to speak about sort of a physical transformation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that I underwent. Really, it starts kind of like way back in childhood. I always was a kid that was never like overweight or fat really, but was never a skinny kid either, right? I was just sort of like a normal size that kind of maybe tended towards being able to gain weight. But I didn't realize just how quickly one can gain weight. And when I was 17 years old, I blew out my right knee skateboarding.
Oh, no.
And I was a really active kid. Like I played every sport growing up. And so that kind of masked probably how much I was eating and the quality of food that I was eating. Like, I was at that age now where I could go to McDonald's on my own and just grab a bite to eat, And I remember in high school, that was a thing. Like, let's hop in somebody's car and drive over to McDonald's, and we'd get French fries and we'd dip it in McChicken, like mayonnaise, which is basically...
McChicken mayonnaise?
Well, it was McChicken sauce, but which is like a mayo. It's a mayo with whatever, like the chicken flavoring in it or something.
I'm going to have to go check that out.
I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that. But the bottom line is this. So I blew out my knee and like needed surgery. It was bad, like ACL, MCL, meniscus. It was really, really bad. And by the time grade 12 rolled around, so this was like early grade 11, maybe October of grade 11, November. By the time grade 12 rolled around, I was 60 pounds heavier. So I don't...
Wow, so this is 1 year or just a few months?
I mean, by the time the next school year started, so less than a year, I had gained easily 60 pounds. And that began like a really crazy relationship to my body, a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of like, how did I get here? And what was it? And I didn't have the awareness or anything really to know, other than the Christian tribe I belonged to, always spoke about health. And so, I knew that there was a way to get back to the kind of health I wanted and the kind of experience I wanted to have with my own body. but it took me a really long time to kind of figure it out. And it wasn't overnight transformation, actually. In fact, you never met me at my heaviest.
Oh.
Right? So when you met me, I was sort of kind of hovering at around 50 pounds overweight. But there was a time in my life in the mid-2000s where I was a size 46 jacket and a 40 waist. So, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with men's clothing, but, you know, I'm a 5'10" frame, 5'11" frame, you know, depending on how much I'm slouching or not. And, you know, I was hovering around 245 pounds. And at that point, you know, you don't even want to step on the scale. Right? You don't really want to know. So when you're at your worst, you're not stepping on a scale. Like the one time you step on a scale, it's like, hey, maybe I lost 5 pounds. Let me step on a scale. And it was like one of those times that I stepped on, I was like 245 pounds.
So it's like a shocker to you, recognizing how much weight you gain.
Utter shame. Like I spent easily 15 years of my life where I never took my shirt off at a beach.
It's almost like body shame.
Oh, total, 100%. And no, completely uncomfortable with myself. Now, interestingly, through all of this, you know, I lived a public life. I was speaking in front of people. I was very active athletically, in spite of, you know, what was sort of happening, but never really figured out sort of what was going on. And then, you know, I got nuggets all throughout life, things that were kind of gonna direct me eventually, even though some of the stuff I didn't really commit to. Like I took some steps and I yo-yoed. So basically I had a decade of yo-yoing with diets and trying to figure it all out. And it wasn't until 2011 that I permanently lost about half of that weight. And my firstborn son was kind of running around and I chased him up a flight of stairs and I got to the top of the stairs and I literally thought my heart was going to jump out of my mouth. And it was just one sprint up a flight of stairs. I don't know, maybe it was 2 flights of stairs. I don't remember, but it wasn't a whole lot of stairs. And I had to like pause and stop and I thought I might be having a heart attack. I didn't know what was going on. And to put that in perspective, at that time, I was not even 30 years old.
So young, and sort of having the fear of dying and, you know, possibly having a heart attack because of the weight gain. And that worry. I can sense how much anxiety that must have put on you.
I couldn't keep up with my 2-year-old. I couldn't keep up with my 2-year-old. And so I actually went back to a book that I'd read in 2003, so 8 years earlier. And just to kind of put things in perspective, I'd become a vegetarian and then slowly made my way to kind of being completely plant-based vegan, even though for about a decade I was junk food vegan, kind of relied on all the super ultra-processed foods. You know, it's like, okay, so I'm not going to eat meat, but I'm going to eat fake bacon, and I'm going to eat fake chicken, and so I ate a lot of that. And so never really dealt with what was actually going on. I just thought, oh, this is better than doing it this way, and didn't realize that I just traded one vice for another.
Okay, so wait, so just pause. So you're saying that there is a way of being a fake vegan versus a good vegan?
It's not fake. No. I wasn't eating animals, so I wasn't hurting animals. Like for a lot of people, veganism is just about the ethics, right? Like,
I see what you mean.
It's just about protecting animal rights or the environment, and they're frankly not cared about the health side of it necessarily. Now, the irony there is that I was trying to do it for health reasons, right?
Yes.
Not realizing that I was sabotaging myself.
Okay, so it sounds like you needed to figure out a way to tailor your nutritional, intake that would be, in a way, benefit you.
Right, but it was an emotional thing that I needed to deal with. Like, I was a food addict. Right? Like, I had addictions to food. I had addictions to flavors that I wanted, and it was a coping mechanism. Right? It was a coping mechanism. So it was this combination of actual addiction, like salt, sugar, and fat, in the right combinations are addictive. Right? So
I think you're right.
There's no two ways about it. Those things are addictive.
It is treating the dopamine for sure.
And you need more and more of it. It functions just like a drug. Like anybody that's been dependent on any kind of a substance, you don't stay at the same dosage. Right? Like you need more for your next hit. Now, and I don't want to get into, I'm not an addictions counselor, I'm not an addiction specialist, I just have my own story of addiction.
But I think it makes sense. It definitely fits, right, into sort of that narrative. And I think a lot of people misconstrue what addiction is. A lot of people think that it has to be connected to some sort of narcotics or alcohol. But no, like everyday people, you know, we can have addictions. And I think the one that you're talking about is your relationship to food.
Right. So in 2011, I remembered a book that I'd read in 2003. The actual book probably is not that important to the story, to be honest. But it was just a story about kind of figuring out a little bit how to do this whole plant-based thing in a healthier way. I was like, I think I can do that. And so I actually did what you're suggesting, which was I figured out how to have my food addiction in a healthier way. Okay. So that worked. It actually helped me lose 50 pounds. And it got me to a place where I would have probably been okay for a lot of more years. Like I was sort of at this comfortable place. I still had all sorts of body shame issues and whatnot, but I could carry myself in public in a way that I wasn't beating myself up constantly about it. So that was 2011. And for the next 5 years, I sort of maintained that weight loss and sort of just hovered at this, this place, and kind of just went through life and was a dad and working hard and trying to figure my life out in other ways. And then in 2016, I made the decision that I wanted to get to another place of health, and I had started to confront my addictions. Sure. I had started to confront, my dependency on food and what that was, and just kind of look. You know what it was? It was the tail end of my. I did a graduate degree in leadership, and in that program they teach you can only lead others once you've learned to lead yourself. And so there was this huge process of kind of self-discovery from 2013 to 2016 while I was doing this graduate work that helped me learn to be introspective in a way that I'd never been comfortable with, and was never really willing to own who I really was, and my complicity in that, and then how I wanted, or how one chooses to get to another place of transformation. Like, how do you change? How do you adapt and become the thing you desperately want in your life?
I'm listening to you, and I think I'm also remembering sort of my graduate years, and definitely there were courses that you had to confront yourself. Right,
and we're both in the helping world, right? Yes. So leadership and psychology are actually not that far apart.
Very similar, areas, and for sure there is sort of that sense of being uncomfortable seeing yourself, right? And then needing to figure out, okay, now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. I need to do something about it. And then the difficult road comes when you're like, okay, I'm just as messed up as everybody else.
Right. And it's thankfully in life, it's only bit by bit. We don't have to confront all of it all at once. It also happens to have coincided with a very challenging time in my life. So, I kind of came off this really big high, and professionally had come to a place where I was able to be in a ministry atmosphere. What ministry? I don't know if this is a Christian audience or not. I was pastoring a church that I really wanted to be pastoring. And in a situation that just felt like maybe I'm going to find my own wings here a little bit. And then it all kind of came crashing down, and I was given this opportunity, crashing down personally. My marriage kind of fell apart, and I had to deal with a few more other things, but I wasn't ready to deal with those things, and so I needed something to focus on. And I had started actually before everything kind of went sideways to kind of like, okay, I think I'm going to do this health thing a little bit more, because it was coming on the tail end of my graduate studies. And then the rug got taken out from under me, my marriage fell apart, and I found myself on this sabbatical where I was just given some time free. And I'd made a little bit of progress in kind of figuring out the health thing, but I was sitting there with a really good friend one day and commiserating over what had transpired in my life, and I was really down on everything. And I was like, forget this health thing, and I was about to chow down on some junk food. I don't know what it was, like some crazy burger or pizza or something like that. And this person just happened to be a really good friend, and they looked at me and they're like, hey, listen, you just need something to focus on right now. And I know how hard you've been working to try to lose some weight and kind of get on top of that. And, you can wake up after this meal tomorrow and feel really bad about what you ate and sort of just kind of compound your issues, or, you can figure out things as you go, but just give yourself something to think about. You've got a few weeks off here, or it ended up being a whole summer off. And why don't you just focus on yourself? Just become the person you want to be, do all of the work. And so I was going to counseling already, like a lot, because of what had gone on in my life. And so I just focused on my health that summer. Like, it was a gift. And I was able to kind of not rely on willpower and that kind of thing. Instead, I was able to sort of surround myself with the things I wanted to surround myself with. And before I knew it, I couldn't keep the weight on. Like, I just sort of really cleaned up my diet and stopped relying on the fact that I was strong enough to avoid the stuff in my house. Like, if you bring junk food into your house, you're going to eat it if you're a food addict, right? It's like the alcoholic saying, yeah, I can have a 6-pack in the beer, but I'm not going to drink it. Like, yeah, right.
Temptation. Like, you're putting it right there.
You just can't do that to somebody who had an addiction. So I just cleaned house that summer, and I was sort of by myself now, and didn't have anybody other than my kids every other week, and they were totally fine with Dad just kind of making stuff up as he went along. And before I knew it, I could hardly recognize myself. Like, I was lighter and thinner and healthier and faster. Like, I was playing hockey and I was like, what? I was this man in my mid-30s and I was playing with 20-year-old kids, and they were like huffing and puffing, and I was just like hopping on and off the bench, like screaming around the ice. And I was like, yeah, this is how I always wanted to be. People were worried that I had cancer, and then I was like, why are you losing so much weight? What happened? I'm like, I don't know. I'm eating like a horse. And I would like invite people over. I'm like, watch, look at how much I'm eating. I don't know how to keep the weight on. So that was 4 years ago, and today I look totally different than what a lot of people remember. Certainly anybody that remembers me in my 20s. My 20s were like my worst decade in terms of weight. I carried a lot of weight. And you could see it on me, and you could see it in my heart, and it manifested. And now looking back, I see how it manifested itself in so many ways, but I didn't realize it.
So, I think what I've heard from you so far is that you've been able to, it sounds like you had support along the way. So you had this friend who was willing to be like, okay, you're going through a lot, don't make this mistake that you're going to regret. Right. And it sounds like through this leadership program, you were already sort of on the way to thinking about, what it is that you wanted to do. So we have sort of this motivational interviewing where there are stages to when a person actually gets to an actionable stage. So there's pre-contemplative, contemplative, planning, and then action, right? So it sounds like you already went through...
that was like a decade for me.
So you already went through a few of those stages. You were just at the place where you were supposed to make it actionable, right? And that's sort of what I heard from you. And, it's... I want to say opportunistic that you went through all that planning and you were just at that place where you were able to develop that coping piece, and then life throws you, a curveball, and then you're at this place where, I don't know if it was rock bottom for you, but you were at this place where you're at an emotional low. And, you had a choice. Do I go back into, addictive tendencies, or do I... carry out or execute this plan that I know in my heart of hearts is going to work. And you just needed a catalyst, which it sounds like your friend was there to push you over the hill. Be like, listen, man, do that thing that is going to be right. And you did. And it sounds like you had great results. Yeah.
And looking back now in hindsight, you definitely recognize that, other things in life were definitely part of the transferable, emotional bandwidth and the other things in life that you'd already changed in. Like, I had done other significant changes, other significant transformations in my life, whether it was my worldview, like, when you're a Christian and you're studying what we call theology or what we believe about God, like, I had undergone significant transformation in that. And I kind of remembered some of those things. And, so there was many other places where I'd undergone, and had to confront the changes I needed to make in my life about how I thought, or maybe how I acted with people, whatever the case may be. And so that definitely played a role in this sort of physical transformation as well, is that I knew I could change. This was just that next frontier of what I needed to do to regain my health, you know, and it was for my kids, it was for me too, you know, and that was really important. It was really important for me to be able to put all of those pieces out in front of myself and just say, you know, what are all the reasons I'm doing this? You know, they were all really important to me. So, yeah, here we are today.
Yeah, no,
different, you know, different, and thankfully no yo-yoing. No yo-yoing.
You've been able to maintain.
Yeah, like I just stayed there and my body, like, it changed. Yes. It literally changed.
Okay.
Well, we can get into that in a different way, but like, no, physically, my body behaves differently than it used to with food. Yeah. Like my body doesn't respond to sugar the way it used to. Like before it was like this, like, oh, wow, like, just great. Like now I taste often what's out there and I'm like, how do people drink Coca-Cola? It's so sweet, it hurts my teeth.
You know what?
You know, like I can't do it.
I did a fast. It was that Lent, and I chose to do a Daniel's fast for Lent. I don't even know if it was a strict one, but it was strict enough for me that after I was done, I actually went through withdrawal, like probably a week or two of withdrawal. And then at the end, I tasted, I think it was cake or I don't remember what it was, but it was so sweet. And normally this would just be like a normal consumption. And I was just like, wow, you don't realize how much you're eating.
You notice that on richness and saltiness as well. Yeah, now when I go to a restaurant, I'm just like, oh man, I hope there's not a salt bomb, you know? And I pick carefully where I go, you know, if I'm going to eat out. Because, your taste buds change as well. But it's fun. It's good. It's good to go through these things and experience these things. And it's been a game changer for me. Like it's opened up doors and experiences that, and it's had many ramifications in my life in terms of my... lots of things. We could go on.
Yeah, no problem.
If I went down one of these tangents, we'd be here all night, Tricia.
No problem. I think what I will ask, just for the audience, is sort of, okay, if you could share just a little bit of, you know, maybe what your food intake looks like. Right? Because I think we have an idea that, you know, you sort of switched from high sugar, high fat, high salt to sort of, you know, maybe the superficial, you know, artificial meats and stuff like that. It still had a lot of sodium in it. And then now you're switched to a different type. And maybe identify what that third type is. Just to connect the dots. Yeah,
so I mean, like I said, I went vegetarian and vegan long before that and was a junk food vegetarian vegan for years and never really figured it out because it was all of that other addiction stuff. So now I would call myself whole food plant-based.
Got it.
Okay. So by and large, I'm eating very few processed foods, like ultra-processed foods. Like obviously I'll throw stuff into a blender. That's a processed food, you know, it looks different than when it came out of the ground. But what we mean by ultra-processed foods are like things that undergo a significant number of additions in terms of chemicals and things to preserve it. And it really ups whether it's the sugar content or the fat content or the salt content in order, again, to preserve it, make it shelf stable, make it ultra palatable, right? We talk a lot about these things called bliss points. And so cutting all of that out, I eat 95% of my caloric intake. So not quantity of food, because you got to be careful. Like you can eat one, you know, processed food and it is, you know, a significant number of maybe my daily caloric intake. So I eat 90 to 95% of my caloric intake as whole foods and plant-based. So that means I eat no meat or dairy of any kind, and I add very little salt and sugar and almost no added processed fat. So I'll eat avocados and nuts and seeds, and I limit my intake even of those. Like I don't go crazy on them, but I eat enormous amounts of fruit. Like fruit was the saving grace to me when I was overcoming food addiction. I needed something that I could still use as an emotional coping mechanism that I knew wasn't going to sabotage me. So fruit became the unlimited food. I could eat fruit as much as I like, whenever I like. And that's what I did. People used to come over to my house and I'd have a table, and it was like, if there wasn't like 9 or 10 different kinds of fruits, in the middle of the table, you knew that something was wrong. Like, that's just how my house was.
Your house was known for a lot of fruits. Yes.
Yeah, and so I just ate fruit like crazy, and I still do. To this day, I consume a lot of fruit, and during the day, I have at least one huge salad every day. So like where most of my plate is greens, and then I'll add some nuts or seeds to it, or I'll add some tofu or some tempeh, or something like that to add some bulk, or lots of beans. I eat huge amounts of legumes. So those are the two major changes, like fruit all the time, whenever, and huge salads at least once a day.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for
You're
sharing
welcome.
that. At least, we have an opportunity to get, some insight into what you're eating and sort of what contributed, to your transformation. So not only was it one that you had to confront your emotions and where it was coming from, but you also had to make systematic changes to what you were eating to be able to, get to the place where you are today. So it's a holistic approach, it sounds like.
Sure. I think so. I hope so. It's working.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. What tips can you give to our audience? If they're going through something similar to you, they have a food addiction maybe, or they have a bad relationship to their body and to food, maybe one or two tips that you could give to that person who might be listening.
Why don't I start with that second one, like yourself, like how you relate to yourself. I think it's important to notice those things. And I think there's a very big difference between living in a state of shame and sort of holding yourself accountable. I just think there's a big difference between sort of self-judgment and self-accountability. Yeah. And I needed to figure that out because the judgment was just sending me down the coping, emotional eating pathway more, like kind of hating on myself. And the accountability to, wanting to live my best life and kind of recognizing what my best life want it to be and look like, and saying I can get there. So stepping away from self-loathing and sort of stepping into the fact that change and transformation is possible, and the things that you're noticing is okay. Notice those things, but then reframe them outside of judgment, and reframe them instead into this healthy goal setting or visioning, or kind of being able to perceive of what your life could look like. And then on the health front, on the food front, like educate yourself. Educate yourself and be honest. Like I personally think that it's incontrovertible evidence. Okay. And I think everybody, regardless of where they fall on the spectrum of the kinds of foods they incorporate, nobody's going to tell me at all. There's not going to be one argument, aside from maybe like people that consider themselves carnivores and all they eat is meat. Like literally they don't eat fruit, they don't eat any grains, or, if they're only eating meat, maybe. And that's kind of a fad right now, actually, believe it or not. There's a whole carnivore movement. But I mean, I think if you take the preponderance of scientific nutritional evidence, it'll tell you that diets that are rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes are the foundation of a healthy diet. Whether or not you continue to eat some forms of meat or some forms of dairy, or even some processed foods, if you build the bulk of your diet on vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes, with some nuts and seeds, etc., like that is the foundation of a healthy diet regardless. So you can just know if you're getting the majority of your food from that, you are eating the things that lead to health. And it doesn't have to be labeled omnivore, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. I don't care. Just whole foods. Whole foods, the way the earth created them. If you do that, you're on the right path, and you're going to be eating a far healthier diet than the standard Canadian or standard American, standard Western diet. So that's a big one. Just kind of look and say, be honest with yourself. Am I eating more packaged foods than I am eating, foods as they come to us on a tree or in the ground? Or, you got to ask yourself that. Am I eating more strawberry flavored things than I'm eating strawberries?
That's a good way of putting it, right? It's that you really have to, it sounds like, confront yourself on both sides, emotional side and the physical side. What is my relationship to food? And also, what am I actually consuming?
Right.
And then be able to, as you said, educate yourself to be able to find out, okay, what do I strategically want to achieve? And then how can I get there?
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's
and for most people in the weight loss, like this is the evil secret to the whole sort of health industry is everybody says get a gym pass, right? January 1st comes around at the holiday season, everybody's gaining some weight. And where do they go? They go to the gym to try to, you can't outrun a bad diet. Like there are so many people, and
we're gonna put that in bold.
You just can't outrun. You can't outrun a bad diet. You can't, because most people don't realize, like, how long you have to run to burn 400 calories. You have to run for like an hour at a pretty good intensity, probably, to burn 400 or 500 calories. Wow, listen, you could eat half a bag of chips in 10 minutes and have that 500 calories, and that is not nutritionally like good for you. So anyways, you can't outrun a bad diet.
Yeah.
Can't outrun a bad diet. You can't out-exercise it. Yeah, it's just never going to happen.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you for sure. Thank you so much, Steven,
for
coming and sharing your insight with us, sharing a little bit of your journey and some tips that we can walk away with to start our journey, with weight loss. If you have, I guess, a negative connotation to food and to your body, hopefully what Steven shared today will be helpful for you. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.